Trapezius is the most superficial muscle of the back. It takes up a huge, big area. As I mentioned earlier today, it is actually pretty thin in the middle and inferior portions. But, you know, it's got a pretty big beefy area up on the shoulders. Everybody feels tight in that area. Most of your clients like some kind of a focus there. So let's take a look at the O, the I, the A, starting with origin. Has a big, big, long description. So before we kind of look at every single word, let me kind of draw it in, I'm drawing it in red now because I'm talking about an origin. It starts up here at the head and goes down the entire middle of the spine, all the way down to the last ribs. Yeah, and that's a lot simpler than the description makes it sound. And then the insertion, in blue, we have that wonderful triangle. That's the same as the deltoid's origin. So let's take a look at the description of that. And here's a view from the side. I would say, except for the upper trapezius, you know, we often work people's trapezius when they're face down. When they're face up too, though, we can work this kind of part in the back. We'll show you how to do that. All right, so starting with the the origins again. The part I drew up at the top, right in the center, there's kind of a bump you can feel on yourself at the base of your skull. External occipital protuberance, which is abbreviated EOP. Can I resist? I can't resist. I love saying EOP. Yeah, you know me. I couldn't resist. I tried really hard. So from the EOP, you can feel that bump in the middle. Then it goes to the medial portion of the superior nuchal line. And so the nuchal lines are kind of bumpy areas on the head. So what you kind of feel is if you feel the part on your head that sticks out the most at the bottom, right before the drop off. So the part that sticks out right before it, like the angle of the head goes in. So right at kind of that ledge right there. And then it goes down the ligamentum nucha, and the spinous processes of C7 to T12 makes more sense on the other page. So let's go back. This one can be a little, people often wonder what this word means. So the ligamentum nucha is just a ligament that in the cervical region is on top of the spinous processes of the vertebra. So the rest of the description of the origin lists C7 or T1 down to T12 spinous processes. It's the same thing in the cervical region. It's just that there's a ligament on top of it that they're referring to. So the ligamentum nucha is on the spinous processes of C1 to C7, and then we continue on spinous processes of T1 to T12. So the ones that the ribs attach to. So going all the way down to T12, where the last, you know, thoracic rib attaches, you could see, you know, that's pretty far inferior, right? So that ends up making a pretty big angle of, you know, the traps that come pretty far down. And a lot of times students, when they're starting massage, will notice the lower traps the most when massaging across that angle in the low back, or excuse me, in the mid to low back, kind of flipping over a little muscle that kind of jumps. If you're on that angle, that's often the traps. Questions so far? All right, and then I think you hopefully got a little bit of a sense of the insertion already, because it's the same as the deltoid's origin. So you may recall it from such muscles as the deltoid. All right, so I'm going to just go to the picture so I can draw it at the same time. I'm going to draw insertions in blue. So lateral third of the clavicle. acromion process, and spine of the scapula. And that triangle is very palpable on the top of the shoulders. And again, go ahead and palpate your own all the way from lateral third of the clavicle. And you can feel that muscle, right, of the traps on top, and then all the way out to acromion, and then feel on the inside how you can feel the muscle there. And then on the back of spinous processes and spinous scapula, you can feel the muscle there, and then you can grab it. So can you all feel the traps go all the way out there? Yeah. So that's really nice when you're massaging the traps, whether it's compression or whether you're moving the shoulders, you know, back and forth, or whether you're using effleurage or petrissage, or all the techniques really to take it all the way out to the edge. And here's a really cool thing that even in Swedish massage you can do. And this is one great thing about having good knowledge of kines and good palpation skills, is like you can literally, like even with the deeper effleurage, carve right along that spinous process, spine of the scapula. And you can feel how the muscle gets really kind of tight and bumpy in there, and it feels really good when you work that out. Yeah, questions, comments?
So the deltoid and the trapezius, are they just like literal neighbors that just come together because there is tendon, right?
Yeah.
Like they're like head.
Yep. Yep. They share the same edge. Yep. And in the body, that connective tissue would connect the two of them in a way where it literally like weaves together, so that they literally will have a fascial relationship to each other. Yeah. So, and it feels really good. You know, you can try it on yourself, depending on how flexible you are, like working all the way from the traps down through your deltoid, and both muscles will love you for like connecting the two. So yeah, good stuff. Couple quick things, you know, when the client, because I like to help you make lots of massage connections here. When the client is face up, this is some of the work that we've started to do both in compression and Swedish, is that you can get really right up to that nuchal line. And then if you feel the side of the back of your neck, you can feel kind of where the bump of trapezius kind of ends. And that's one of those muscles when you get to the back of the neck, whether they're face down or up, that you can really start doing some squeezing. Now there's a lot of layers of muscles in there, but that kind of big speed bump in the back, your traps. The similar to the deltoid, and this just, I don't know, is not true of a lot of muscles, it just happens with these two, is that we've got fibers coming from very different directions. So if we have fibers attaching coming from the top down and from the bottom up, what do you think that means they can do to the scapula? The top down ones, what way do you think they can move the scapula? Up, awesome, right? And then the ones down here, down and rotate. Yeah. So we can pull it in totally different directions. So once again, we have a muscle that can be an antagonist to itself. And sometimes how this works is it can actually be like 3 different muscles. And so they'll talk about upper traps, middle traps, and lower traps. And you will often use one, but not the other. And so given that a lot of people have this stressed out posture of shoulders jacked up into ears, which of the traps, upper, middle, or lower, would be over tight and overused in that position? Upper, yeah. So people's upper fibers, I would say the vast majority of people, their upper fibers are more jacked up, and to the point where their lower fibers get weak. So a lot of people need their middle fibers and their lower fibers more activated, and then their upper fibers to simmer down. Yeah.
If you were to strengthen those muscle fibers, would that be when you're doing like like the lat pull down machine, would that be facilitating that?
Yeah, for sure. I love those motions, both on the rowing machine and the lat pull down machine. I'll do a lot of focus because massage therapists too, with our pushing forward rounding motions, we also are stretching our rhomboids and our middle traps too long and weak. And we need to do more things where we're pulling them back and down. You can also have either an imaginary or real medicine ball or beach ball with your clients, where they roll their shoulders back to pull the ball back, and that you want to really focus on the middle border of the rhomboids coming back and together.
Do you remember that John used to do this all the time during class?
Yes, I do. And he sat right there.
Mhm.
And that was like, what, 10 years ago?
Young.
Oh, good job. Thanks for jumping in on answers too, Vanna. Yeah, so we often need to help clients strengthen those movements. And the one I'm showing you is one that you can teach them. So massage is really great at techniques that lengthen and relax muscles. But if we want clients to strengthen muscles that are not activated, we need to do active movements where the client is the one doing the motion. And you can kind of sneak that into a massage by doing motions where you're kind of massaging them at the same time, but have them do the movement. Or you can teach them movements like this one where they're moving their shoulders back and down. Yeah. All right. Cool. So let's take a look at the actions now. We had some previews thinking about them, but let's look at them all now. As I mentioned, we organized the trapezius into really three muscles. We call them upper, middle, and lower. Whereas in deltoid, they were called anterior, middle, and posterior. Yeah. So our upper fibers bilaterally extend the head and neck. And what bilaterally means is that the left and the right one are both doing the job at the same time. So since muscles exist on the left and the right, sometimes, right, we're just contracting one side and not the other, but sometimes we contract both sides at the same time. So when we contract the trap fibers together, in the upper, the neck area, that extends the head and neck, so tilting the head backwards. Unilaterally, uni for one, means that you're only using the right or the left, right? And that can laterally flex the head and neck to one side, so like ear to shoulder. Rotate head and neck to opposite side. Elevate the scapula. And upwardly rotate the scapula. Let me go back to the other view to talk about rotation, because it might be harder to picture. How are y'all doing? Great. All right, so let's take a look at these upper fibers and how they are attaching in this kind of region of the scapula that's sort of like on the spine, but angling up towards the neck. So if you imagine like drilling a hole through the center of the scapula so that you only allow a rotational movement, like a pivot movement, imagine if you were pulling from sort of the inside side that it would, sorry, I'm showing you that wrong. Erase. Try again. Same idea, but if you pull more from the side, it's going to pull this outside up. So the shoulder comes up is your upward rotation. Sorry. All right. Any questions before we move to the middle fibers? All right, so the middle fibers, I wish they had this on the better view because this side view doesn't really show us a lot. They adduct the scapula and stabilize the scapula. So on these middle fibers, if we imagine the fibers coming from the middle of the spine of the scapula out towards the medial border, and we shorten the distance, it's going to pull that scapula inward. Now, there's a word you're going to see a lot called stabilizing. Imagine that there's all these muscles coming from different angles around the scapula. And a lot of times when we're doing one motion, we're simultaneously preventing lots of other motions. So that's what the stabilization is. If we're like holding the scapula or something else into place while we're just wanting another motion. So those muscles can contract to different degrees. So let's say we were to take the middle fibers, let's pretend they were 3 inches long and we shorten them to like 1.5 inches. That's actually going to move the scapula. Or we can contract them with less force, just enough to prevent the movement of the scapula. And that's when it's stabilization. Does that make sense? Follow-up questions? All right, cool. So then the inferior or lower fibers, like you guys figured out, it depresses the scapula and then it upwardly rotates the scapula. So it's kind of a similar idea for the rotation, where it's pulling on an angle where it can pull the scapula like this. That's a lot on that one. It's big origin and a lot of actions. Questions on that one? All right. That's kind of one of our beefiest muscles. There's a lot of details there. Let's see about any other massage ideas here before we move on. In these images, the top one, we're kind of seeing that kind of like squeezing the edges of the muscles. You know, we do that a lot with the traps. Those upper fibers, right, they're tight on a lot of people, on the top of the shoulder. One thing about that is that we want to get down past them as well into supraspinatus. So we'll start even in tomorrow's lab getting deeper with our Swedish. And when we do that yummy petrissage on the top of the shoulders, after we warm up these superficial traps, we want to get down into supraspinatus as well, which is really good stuff. In this bottom diagram, it's kind of showing what I was saying about when you come on an angle against the lower fibers of the trap, sometimes you'll feel that edge, but they're very thin. They're even for very muscular people.